It is so good to see you again, Klaus, here in Vienna. We met same time next year, right? This is about the time we met you last year here. And for the people in our audience who are not familiar with your work, I would like you to give us a little bit of background about how you ended up in such a strange field as originally you were a classic kind of art curator. A more traditional, I should say more traditional art curator, and now you are a curator of some of the strangest stuff on the planet. And so let's talk about that, and then we can start getting into some of the newer discoveries since we last spoke.
A few years ago, exactly around 1997, I had, together with a friend of mine, the idea to bring to Vienna into an exhibition some unexplainable artifacts from all over the world. Because when I did overseas trips for my cultural exhibitions, mainly to Japan, I had many hours on the airplane and also in the hotel room. So I read many books from famous authors about former civilizations, about Atlantis, Mu, and all these stories. And I was a big skeptic, and I thought it would be a good idea to bring all or many of these unexplainable artifacts to Vienna and show it in an exhibition to the public and give the science the chance to check on these artifacts, if they are real or frauds or imitations or whatsoever.
How did you even come about the actual artifacts themselves? I mean, it's one thing to read about lost civilizations, but how did you actually come about the artifacts, the original artifacts?
We researched only, at the beginning, we researched only artifacts which are in museums worldwide.
Okay.
Where there was not a really explanation about them. And a friend of mine, a museum director, he wrote to all his colleagues around the world and asked if we might be able to lend some of these artifacts for the exhibition in Vienna. And 1.5 years work after, that was just 1.5 years before the planned opening of the exhibition, we received all the answers from the museums, and out of 356 requests, we got only the acceptance of one museum, of one artifact. So all of my friends, of course...
Not much of an exhibit with one artifact.
No. So everybody around us told us, so you better give up, because in 1.5 years, what would you do if you have only one artifact? How many do you need? And we planned originally showing about 200 up to 220 pieces. And from that moment on, we started to research by ourselves through internet, through telephone, through several trips to South America, to United States, in Europe to some places, and finally, at the opening on 21st of June 2001, we could show 470 pieces.
Oh, now, did you have to get these from private owners, private collections?
From some small museums, which we found especially in South America, but the majority of these pieces from private collections.
That's quite a feat. I mean, just that you had people, I guess your friend that you were speaking about, the person you're doing this with, that even knew who to contact for these private collections is pretty amazing in and of itself. This isn't all well known.
I would say we had a lot of good luck, and there were so many coincidences which just brought us all these pieces. I mean, we planned 200, 220, but finally, a little bit before the opening of the exhibition, we had the acceptance of 470. So we couldn't refuse. So the whole budget, of course, exploded, because we needed more transportation costs, packing costs, more showcases, more lighting and everything, but it was worthwhile.
Well, now this had to have been not a freak show by any means, but one of the strangest collections of artifacts ever assembled, especially in that kind of, in those numbers. And let's go back into what you had gathered. Some of the stranger, these are all unexplained, pretty much. Most of these were unexplained items.
Most of these.
They have no scientific explanation at this point behind them. So
That's right.
let's talk about a few of those original items that still kind of blow your mind to this day.
For example, one very strange collection we found in Ecuador, in a small place called Lamana. I heard about the finding of over 300 pieces which do not fit any South American pre-Columbian culture, found there while gold digging in a tunnel system by an Ecuadorian engineer, Engineer Sotomayor. And through an Austrian friend, we got the contact through his brother to the owner of this collection, and we visited this place. And when I saw these pieces, I was just shocked because many of the pieces have precise inlays, colorful inlays.
Oh, very precise inlays, yes.
And you see the colors, of course, on daylight, but later on in the evening, the owner brought some of these pieces on the table, and he closed the light, and we were surprised. We thought, what's going on now? And then he brought a black light lamp, ultraviolet lamp, and all the colors, the inlays in these pieces were glowing and shining very strong. And the most interesting piece there was a pyramid, the shape like Egyptian pyramid, but flat, made out in stone, and 13 steps in carvings, and on top an eye. And the eye, the color of the eye was gray, light gray, dark gray. But when he brought the black light, when he showed it under black light, the eye was glowing very strong, and it looked like there is one star constellation photo from NASA, which is called the Eye of God, or God's Eye.
God's Eye.
And this inlay, the shining of this eye, looks quite similar, I would say.
Is there any idea whatsoever of how old that artifact may have been?
Stone age dating is the big difficulty,
yes,
the big problem.
Yeah,
and
because it doesn't succumb to the standard procedure of carbon dating, right, with bones and other things.
Right, but one thing, if we talk about known pre-Columbian cultures, the oldest one is the Ecuadorian Valdivia culture, and it goes back about 4000 BC, that means 6,000 years. So if all these pieces have no connection to any known pre-Columbian South American culture, the pieces should be at least older than 6,000 years.
And very sophisticated in their artwork.
Very sophisticated. Some of them are so precise that when we showed them the most interesting ones in Vienna, some specialists in stoneworking, they said it would be even difficult to do the same thing in our days. A big stone cup found together with 12 little stone cups. On the big cup you have carvings of a star constellation, and the cup inside is very magnetical, outside only in the center of the 3 stones building a pyramid. And this is, concerning geologists, impossible, because if a stone has material inside the stone, it must be same magnetical from both sides. This cup is different.
And to say nothing of this substance that glows in the dark. Have you figured out what that is yet? Has anyone?
What we think it was some illuminating crystals.
Illuminating crystals, okay.
Yes, that they made it like powder, and they used some glue or any material to make it hard and put it exactly in the carving lines.
But light-emitting crystals.
Yes. There are existing precious stones or semi-precious stones. If you put black light on them, they are shining very strong.
It's amazing. And you did a video.
Yes.
A DVD.
Yes,
actually.
yes.
That's absolutely fascinating. I've seen the DVD, obviously. And I mean, we were just enthralled throughout because, again, no one has ever seen these items before. We're unlikely to ever come in contact with them personally. And so you've done us all the service of putting this together, traveling around to these various collections and putting it in a DVD format. So certainly anybody that has a chance to watch that DVD, I highly recommend it.
Thank you.
Okay, so there were some others as well, and a lot of it seemed to be astronomically oriented.
Yes, many of them. For example, there is also in the same collection, there is a big jade cup and 12 little cups. And in the big cup, there is the inlay of a precise star constellation. And in the little ones, you have the encarvings of numbers. And the numbers are looking like the Mayan numbers, but with a little difference. So very interesting. But for me, the most interesting thing was the pyramid with the eye.
Yes.
Because on the bottom of this pyramid was the inlay of the Orion constellation in little gold plates and an unknown writing. So after receiving, after making the photos and showing some of the pictures to one gentleman, one professor in Germany, his name was Kurt Schildmann, and he was the president of the German Language Society, and he spoke and wrote and read more than 40 languages.
It's inconceivable, but wonderful.
And he did research on the Hindus wall writing and also on the Easter Island writings.
Yes.
And he said that there is a light similarity between those this writing from South America and the Hindus wall and the Easter Island writings. And finally he could decipher the writing, the explanation on the bottom of the pyramid, and it was writing, "The Son of the Creator comes." That was his translation. And later on we found other artifacts in Colombia, in Ecuador, in United States, in Illinois. There is a famous story going around about the so-called Burrows Cave.
Yes, let's talk about the Burrows Cave.
I fully believe in the originality of the pieces.
The authenticity, okay.
I fully believe in it because otherwise Professor Schildmann wouldn't have been able to translate also some of those stones from Illinois. And we found the same writing in Glosel. In Glosel, 1924, a farmer found on his ground hundreds of stones and bones with ink carvings with the same writing.
Where is this again?
Glosel in France.
In France, yes, okay.
And still until today, it was 1924, still until today the official French science does not accept those pieces as authentic.
Yes, and so this is the same writing you're saying that was on the bottom of the little pyramid with the glowing eye.
Exactly the same writing.
Deposited all over the planet.
Later on we found pieces in Calabria, in Italy, in Malta, Mediterranean island, in Turkmenistan, and even in Australia. That means there must have existed a global civilization or a civilization which had global contact in the past.
Meaning they needed to move around. They were able to get around.
Yes.
They got around.
Or
they came from elsewhere.
Or, for example, you have a famous writing in the Bible, for example, until the building of the Tower of Babel, there was they all spoke only one language.
Yes.
But for the official science, it's difficult to accept this writing because they say that it is a mixture of different old writings, like Greek writings, like runes, and others. So,
if you're looking at this, then this, and I want to go back to Burrows Cave in a bit, but along this trajectory, then we have to be assigning a common civilization very, very, very far back. Maybe we're going back as far as what was known as Mu or Lemuria.
That's what I think so. Because in the collection of La Mana, there was also a 350 kilo granite rock. And you have a natural white quartz line going around the stone, and all the continents and countries are encarved and inlaid with a red material. So you can see here that approximately where Israel or the Near East is, showing Europe, showing United States, part of South America, Asia, and there are two continents encarved which do not exist in this style or even not exist
in
today.
This day.
Here, for example, you see the quartz line is passing the Atlantic Ocean, and you see a continent, which means that must be the so-called sunken continent Mu. And Japan also is not showing like today.
Yes.
It's showing from the northeast Japanese islands, now belonging to Russia, far down Taiwan. There is a long continent. And you know that outside the southeast Japanese island, Yonaguni, very close to Taiwan, they found in the 1980s human-made big stone structures under the sea level. That means
Yes, and does that have to
old.
do with Graham Hancock's explorations at all, do you know? Is it one and the same?
That's Yonaguni.
Yonaguni,
Graham
yeah.
Hancock wrote about
Yes.
it in his books.
Right.
And he got also contact with Professor Masaaki Kimura. That's a Japanese undersea geologist who does all these researches. And Professor Kimura came to Vienna for the opening of our exhibition 2001 because he lended us the model of the biggest structure, undersea structure, and he also lended us two artifacts he found next to this stone structure under the sea level.
Now, is the supposition that that may have been part of the lost continent of Mu?
For me, it looks like, and I got many informations, for example, from Mongolia. They found pieces made out of jade, very strange pieces. But for me, the most interesting piece, which is now in a family collection since hundreds of years in Macau, in China, I received from the family many photos, and there is one piece made out of bronze, a bronze statue. And when I saw this picture first, I thought they sent me a piece from Egypt because it's exactly showing Isis, the goddess Isis.
Goddess Isis, yes.
And there are a lot of researchers already in 200 years ago, 150 years, 200 years ago, they researched on the so-called sunken continent Mu.
Yes.
And there was a British colonel in India, and he did a lot of research in India, and he found in a temple some plates with unknown writing, and the monks helped him to translate it, and it was talking about the sinking of the continent Mu. And for me, many of the artifacts are showing a route from the Pacific Ocean through Japan, through China, down to India, and further on to Egypt. And on the other way, from the Atlantic Ocean, Atlantis, the so-called Atlantis civilization, yes. Atlantis continent. There is a route showing to South America, Mexico, but on the other hand also to Western Africa.
Yes.
And then further on to Egypt.
Egypt, yes.
So why the Egyptian culture suddenly appeared in such a precise style, or even the Sumerian.
Well,
6,000 years, suddenly they started with mathematics,
exactly.
with astronomy, and many other knowledge.
Well, and
everything suddenly.
yes, and I
this
mean,
is very strange.
it is strange, and the esoteric thought on that already is out there. But again, people are just trying to piece things together. You don't necessarily have scientific basis for a lot of it, but there is other mythological basis, ancient texts, rare texts, and interpretations would piece it together that Egypt, the Egyptian culture, was simply an extension, and there was a much more ancient Egyptian culture than what we know of now. Was simply an extension of the Atlantean culture, as some of the people from Atlantis actually bridged over into Egypt.
Yes.
And so then from Mu, it would make, why wouldn't it make sense that we would have a very similar phenomena? And then, you know, looking at it from that level, I always find it curious that even in the Bible, right, it speaks of the Tower of Babel, and it speaks of the people being separated to various places all over the planet. But I never heard anyone actually look at the dynamics of how those people were placed elsewhere. Because really what's coming up to me in these themes, if we're looking at we're going to get into some of this in a bit. Things that are way out of place from where they supposedly originated, very heavy items that really, realistically didn't come over, certainly in dugout canoes, okay?
Yeah.
So we're looking at the phenomena of space travel. We're looking at the phenomena of ancient extraterrestrial cultures that have probably been around and doing quite a bit throughout time. And we've spoken about that in other interviews. But what struck me is that the Babel phenomena is that if you have aircraft, you can simply transport large portions of populations to other areas and deposit them. I mean, it's certainly within possibility. We just don't ever ask the questions. I mean, there's a lot of it sitting right there, you find in plain sight, to be asked, but we just don't ask.
Because what could not be, should not be. That's always a big explanation. I mean, there are so many things all over the world. If the official science would accept some of the pieces which I found all over the world,
yes,
they must rewrite human history.
And everyone's resistant to this kind of change, especially if you're left hanging there with no tools to be able to decipher how this happened. That seems to be where things get hung up. But there's another part to it too, and that has to do with sheer commerce. And we're going to talk about that a little later. But now that we've kind of gone off on that sidetrack a bit, let's get back to Burrows Cave, because this is one example.
Burrows Cave wrote a book.
And let's talk about where it is and what's been found there and everything.
It's found in Illinois.
In America.
If you look today into the internet, 90% of the writings you find is saying that the whole story is fraud.
A hoax, the usual story, yeah.
For me, it's difficult to believe that it's a hoax, because how could someone decipher or read a writing which officially does not exist? And Professor Schildman, he passed away a few years ago in the age of 94. And he was translating some of the Burrows Cave stones, and it was talking about Jupiter, Venus, flying objects, big catastrophes, and such stories. A man in the age of 85 up to over 90, he's not interested in writing about fantastic or fairy tales or something like that.
He was a serious German
He was very
scholar.
serious. And there is another man living until today, and hopefully several more years. It's an Italian professor. And in Calabria, a landowner found, after a heavy storm, he found ceramic plates and artifacts on his ground with exactly the same writing like on Burrows Cave. And there was a big plate, ceramic plate, and this professor in Italy received all the photos, and he could translate the writing on the big ceramic plate. And it was explaining a place in southern Italy where there is a little stone circle, where there is a mastodont, a prehistorical elephant statue made out of stone. And in this area, there are the graves of the sea kings. And
The sea kings?
The sea kings. The translation was talking about the graves of the sea kings. And an Italian publisher of an archaeological magazine, very serious man, Adriano Forgione, he found upon the translation the stone circle, the mastodont statue made out of stone, very old because it's already nearly destroyed, but still you can see it's not showing an elephant, it's showing a mastodon.
Yes.
And
From
the
another age.
area of the graves, because they did ground penetrate radar research on spot, and they found tunnel and anomalies underground, but they did not receive the allowance to excavate.
The permissions, they couldn't go in and excavate it. Now this is, again, near Calabria?
In Calabria,
Yeah,
So
Italy.
how can you find places described on a fraud plate in a non-existing language? For me, it's impossible.
Yes.
So many coincidences, I don't believe that's possible.
Well, now there are so many that we're really having to, in all fairness, take it out of the realm of coincidence. There's another story. There's something else that's been going on all along.
I think so.
Now, I'm just going back one more time. What did they find in Burrows Cave? What was supposedly, and I know Philip Coppens has written about this as well. We've interviewed Philip, so we can look to some of his work. But tell us what you know was found there.
What I know was found there were gold artifacts, thousands of stones with these unknown engravings, but also showing faces, profiles of human from different continents, like black people, like Asian peoples, like South American peoples. So just things which is incredible.
That are not native to that region.
Definitely not, definitely not.
Tell us about the person who found this, all these artifacts, Burrows himself, and when did this happen?
Burrows, I met him in 2001. He brought some of his findings, some of his stones to the exhibition to Vienna, and he did also a speech in a conference. And he explained, and he wrote a book about Burrows Cave, he explained that he found also overman-sized statues with precious stones inside, that he found small chambers with sarcophagus.
Small what with sarcophagus?
Statues.
Statues, okay.
Statues.
Yes.
Sarcophagus.
Sarcophagus in Illinois.
Made
in
out
a cave.
of gold.
Made out of gold.
So for me the big question is, how can you bring gold sarcophagus, which must be very, very heavy, inside an underground tunnel system? That's a very big question. Then he explained that he also found some papyrus rolls.
Some papyrus.
Papyrus.
Papyrus rolls,
and
scrolls.
For me, scrolls. And that would be something very interesting for me, because that might give us informations about where those pieces came from.
Has anyone seen the scrolls?
No. He only was talking about.
Does he have access to them, or?
I have no idea.
We don't know.
I have no idea.
Okay. I mean, yes, it would be absolutely fascinating to see what's on them. But again, you say that the writing that was on some of those artifacts was the same as the other you were speaking about.
Which we found all over the world.
Possibly an original language of Mu or something. I mean, it's just theoretical at this time.
So if all these pieces are fraud, there must have been a guy or some guys already before 1924, because the first official finding was in Clausel in France, of the same writing. Already before 1924, doing some fakes or frauds and bring them from Australia to United States to South America to Europe and hide it and hope that someday someone finds it and get headache what this is.
That would be quite an endeavor to undertake just for the sake of pulling off one big hoax at some point later in the future. And
Would
so
have been difficult.
it would have been very difficult.
Yes.
And we have many, many more things to talk about.
Yes.
And probably the largest icons to a past time have to be pyramids. And in fact, we're going to be heading to Bosnia. And we're going there because of the Bosnian pyramid. You've already been to this pyramid.
Yes.
And I would like you to maybe just share a little bit about the pyramid itself, what you find particularly phenomenal, and then about some explorations beyond.
I got an invitation last year, September, to a conference to Visoko, to the place of the Bosnian pyramids.
Outside of Sarajevo.
From Professor Osmanagic. And when I saw the list of speakers, I saw that there are 9 or 10 scientists. So I thought, who? And I come with my unexplainable artifacts.
You wanted to get some validation on some of your artifacts.
Yes, but I don't have artifacts. I only lend it for research or for the exhibition.
Yes.
So what I did, I made a PowerPoint presentation. But I have a very good friend in Germany, and he invented a new technology. And I asked him, can you do me the favor and try to make a scan over the so-called Sun Pyramid, officially just a mountain.
The Sun Pyramid in Bosnia,
In
which
Bosnia.
the Egyptians are saying, impossible, it's a fake, it's just a mountain.
Definitely.
That's the official word, is it's a hoax right now.
Yes, it's if you look into the internet, it's a hoax.
Yeah.
Like Burrows Cave.
Yes.
And when he worked on it, he called me 2 times and he said, that's a really difficult thing because what I find is just unbelievable. And he did me a drawing on a photograph of the Sun Pyramid, and he showed me exactly in different colors that there is a tunnel system inside this so-called mountain, going from 5 meters down to 120, 140 meters, and even he was drawing some rooms inside.
So there are tunnels with rooms that
Yes.
spread down underneath this
Yes.
Bosnian pyramid.
Yes.
And he said there was indeed a pyramid there. It wasn't a mountain. There's a pyramid there.
And it shows exactly that it's not just a mountain,
Yes.
it must be a pyramid, because otherwise, why would you make some tunnels and rooms inside a mountain? And it's also an approval that it is a pyramid.
It's been
because
proved.
Professor Osmanagic did in the past several excavations on top of the pyramid, and they found human-made stone structures and all these.
Yes.
But officially he is now, the government prohibited after the Egyptian specialists said it's not a pyramid, they prohibited excavation on the pyramids.
Wait a minute. The Bosnian government
Yes.
prohibited any kind of excavation on the pyramid
Yes.
simply because of what the Egyptians said?
Yeah, of course, because they are afraid that it's getting worldwide, people are laughing about
Bosnia. And
Bosnia.
because of the ridicule factor.
It's completely a ridicule factor, because if they, and these are pyramids, but if it's officially announced that these pyramids must be older than at least 10,000 years, then we talk about a high civilization in Europe older than 10,000 years. That means older than the famous accepted high civilizations, which are only 6,000 years. So there would be automatically a missing link of a high civilization in Europe older than the Egyptian, because until now the official scientists, they say that the oldest civilization, or the beginning of the high civilization in Egypt, in China, in Middle East, they are only going, they started about 6,000 years ago.
Yeah, well, some of that is already
And the
fallen by.
pyramids are only
Yeah.
4,500 years
Yeah.
old, and all this, it would
It
change
upsets
everything.
the story and creates missing links theoretically, and
Big
that does
missing
upset
links.
academia.
Right.
It doesn't upset us though, and it doesn't
No,
upset our viewers.
it's
We want
interesting.
more. We want to know more. Everything.
Of course, because after after being prohibited to make excavation on the pyramid, he started, because they found with ground penetrate radar, they found about 2.5 kilometers away from the Sun pyramid, they found a huge underground labyrinth, and it's just amazing.
You went in there.
I went there because they did excavation since the last few years, and they still continue, because it is such a huge, big underground
We hear they're doing,
labyrinth.
what, 150, they're excavating about 150 meters a year is
Yes.
the rate they're going. This
Yes.
is hand
Yes.
excavation, yeah.
And why? Because this labyrinth is completely and precisely perfect filled.
What do you mean field? Oh, field, the
They
field,
filled
yes.
it. No, they
No, filled?
filled.
Oh, the whole thing has been filled
The
in,
whole
yes.
thing is perfectly filled. And if I say perfectly, that means that it's so perfect filled that usually you cannot do it by hand, because always you would have some empty space inside. There is not one little empty space.
So they've used some technology to backfill the entire
It looks
labyrinth.
like
I wonder why
that's-
that would have been done.
That's a big question.
Why
Why
would
do
they
I
fill that
make
in?
such a big labyrinth?
Yes.
First of all, and Professor Osmanagic will tell you that he thinks that it was done already more than 10,000 years ago.
That it was filled in, 10,000,
No,
or made, it was
made,
built? Yes,
at least.
okay.
And he thinks, upon some of the material findings, that it was closed about 5,000 years ago. But why, first of all, they make such a big labyrinth with hundreds of tunnels? And the second most bigger question is, why do you fill it so precisely?
To fill it back so it almost is completely inoperative then?
Completely, because
Well-
normally if you close your tunnel system or your secret place, it's enough with about 5 or 10 or 15 meters.
Right. But the whole thing, really,
whole
it would seem that
thing.
they were trying to make whatever it is completely inoperative.
Right.
And apparently it is a field inside, an energetic,
It
that is
is.
absolutely perfect for rejuvenation, healing,
Right.
and so forth, which is interesting. That would all be shut down.
You have no radiation at all.
Yeah.
Nothing.
No radiation. Usually there's radiation just from the earth itself.
Right.
There's no radiation.
Yes. And you have ions,
Negative ions.
over 40 times more than in a very, very good room. And the far you go inside,
Yeah.
you have always fresh air.
Yes,
And
the
this is
further you
very
go
strange.
inside, how does this happen? So that was filled in. So now they're excavating at 150 meters
Yes.
a year on that. But another phenomenon, again, you mentioned your German friend that has a very, very, very interesting technology that's able to determine what's going on in the earth. And you mentioned him a bit ago, but you've also found through this technology there are other pyramids in that area.
Yes.
This isn't the only pyramid.
No, that's not the only one. That's why I personally think every mythology, every legend has a big,
Every legend, okay.
every legend has a big percentage of reality included.
So now, just to get this straight, when you and your technological partner get together, you often will follow legend, where
Yes.
legend has it that there's been
Or
information
Yes.
about from maybe even from the indigenous people that there was once a pyramid here, or
Yes.
different kinds of people and so forth. Then that kind of determines where you're going to focus your search, right?
That's right.
Okay, so in Bosnia now we have the Sun Pyramid that they were excavating, and two more. You say you know of at least two more pyramids in Bosnia.
Yes, next to the Sun
Right next to
Pyramid.
this one. Okay.
Yes, where they are, Professor Osmanagic is sure that these are other pyramids.
And the technology showing they are other pyramids.
Yes.
Okay, and now let's go to Crete.
Yes.
That's an interesting. We're talking off camera. Take a little time to share with us what's been found in Crete.
In Crete, we found also a pyramid. because there existed an information from old days that the second son of King Minos was buried in a pyramid. And
that was part of their passed down history or
yes,
legend.
and we found, we got information from local people that there is a mountain where the top of the mountain there are only a few trees, and the earth on top of the mountain is different like the earth on the surrounding places and mountains. So we went there and we did some research on the spot, and later on through my friend's technology, and it's definitely a pyramid. Again, like in Bosnia, there are huge tunnels and rooms inside this so-called mountain.
And often the legends of the people all over, because you've done this kind, you've been to South America, you've been
Yes.
all over the world looking at this phenomena, and your associate has also been looking at it from their point of view, technological point of
Yes.
view, to get validation and pinpoint things here and there. And oftentimes the local population, or I think you told me off camera that in each case, the local population, native population, has legend.
Yes.
Can you tell what their legend generally is?
It always says about long history of humans there. Many of these legends in different continents, different countries are talking about a big flood.
A big flood?
Only a few people survived. Then the story about the giants. You find the story,
The giants after the flood?
legends of giants worldwide in any country, any local tribe, everywhere you find the story about giants. And they are also connected with the pyramids, for example, in Bolivia, in Tiahuanaco, and in Mexico, in Teotihuacan, when the Spanish conquistadors arrived there, and they asked the local people if they did these buildings. They explained, no, this was done at a time where there was no sun shining, and it was made by giants. And the interesting thing is that again, pyramids and so-called flying objects, there I found out a very interesting story. You have the explanations in the Mahabharata, in the Indian Vedas,
Yes.
about the so-called Vimanas.
Vimanas, yeah.
And the interesting story is that the explanation how did they fly was, upon the translation, that they used mercury. Didn't you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
The translation says that they used mercury. And when I got friend with the former director of the archaeological area of Teotihuacan in Mexico, he told me that he found an underground tunnel and they did research in it, and then he found a stone box, perfectly made stone box, and when he opened it, he was shocked because this stone box was filled completely with liquid mercury. And he closed it,
Yeah.
and he informed the official
Hazmat team.
government,
Yes.
and the tunnel
Yeah.
was immediately closed.
Yeah.
And later on, American universities did some researches inside.
Oh, fascinating. No, I have not heard that one.
Yes.
Okay, so we have native populations saying wherever, and this again, we're going to, for the moment in this conversation, we'll place this near pyramids, where
Yeah.
pyramids exist, which there are many, many, many more than have been discovered.
I just came back yesterday from a trip to South Africa, and I got from Michael Tellinger the information that he thinks that there are some 3 pyramids in a valley, and we went there the last few days and we did some research on the spot and further research now with my friend's technology, and I'm quite sure that even there we found 3 pyramids.
in the same area were these stone circles and
Adam's
roughly
calendar
Adam's
is,
calendar
yes,
and all of
yes.
that, the stone circles.
Yes.
So again, we're looking at probably an advanced civilization from elsewhere, because certainly we haven't found any evidence that locals built these incredible structures. And now you're saying, in the words of the locals themselves, the legend is, no, we didn't build them. The giants built them, right?
Yeah.
And last time I was here with you, I had the privilege of holding in my hand the occipital bone of a being which appeared to be very human, a humanoid or human
Yes.
being, that was judged to be by the analysts at the universities in Vienna, right? You had
Yes.
anatomy labs look at it. The occipital bone of someone maybe between 22, 23, 24 feet tall.
Right.
Right in there.
Yes.
And in that, you're in possession of that at this time.
Yes.
But you're saying, from what I'm understanding, the evidence is there are these giants all over the planet.
That's right. You always find evidence. Even last year I got the information in Visoko, the ambassador of Pakistan. He was there at our conference, and he explained also about giant skeleton findings in Pakistan. So all over the world you have stories and reports about oversized humans, from 22 feet down to 10 feet, 15 feet.
We have a completely misunderstood history around this planet, in that there are pyramids we're finding them all over the place, far more than we'll probably excavate within our, than will ever be excavated within our lifetime. And so what does this mean to you?
They must have had a very special function, which we cannot explain until today, but Professor Osmanagic is doing a lot of researches at the Sun Pyramid in Bosnia with scientists, and they found out already several incredible informations, but you will get this detailed information
We'll get these from Samir.
him personally.
Okay.
So I don't think that the majority of the pyramids were tombs or graves.
No.
I don't think so.
No.
Because even in the big pyramid in Egypt, they didn't find any mummy or any dead person.
No.
So they had other functions. Second one is, for me, until now, there is no explanation why they built these pyramids globally, worldwide, everywhere in the Pacific area, on islands, which gives us another hint to the so-called sunken continents, Mu and Atlantis. But usually you should not talk about this, because they never existed. It's just a legend. And I also got a few days ago a very interesting DVD about the finding of the so-called Atlantis-looking construction or Earth movement, exactly like Plato was explaining in his
Plato.
Plato.
Yes, yes.
In Mauritania.
Oh, in Mauritania. Okay, I read about that. Eric von Daniken's recent book talks about the Plato's description of what Atlantis was like, that he was given from a much more elderly teacher himself. And you're saying
Yes.
this is found in Mauritania?
Mauritania and inside the land, but those researchers explained that there was sea
Yes.
in old days.
Yes.
And the structure itself, even on Google Earth, you can see it. It looks like the explanation of Plato.
Yo, interesting.
So with my friend, we tried to do a research on this area. Maybe we are on the right way.
So it looks like there is some evidence there may be truth in this particular region.
Could be.
Very interesting. Klaus, I love talking with you. I know that you have many, many more things you can't even talk about just yet because they're still works in progress.
Sure.
And which means I probably will have to come to Vienna again next year so that we can catch up on what's going to be known between now and then. And meanwhile, your incredible video, the Klaus Dona Chronicles.
From 1992 on, I did many big cultural exhibitions from Austria in Japan. From 2001 until these days, I think it changed my meaning a lot about human history, about the history of civilizations, about the age of human, about Darwinism and many other things. It was a great experience, unforgettable, and it was the beginning of a successful research. It's not easy at all, but it's exciting. And every information, every piece, new artifact is a kind like a puzzle. And maybe one day, if we have a lot of information and everything, we can really make out a good picture about humans' past.
I agree with you. I think it's the most exciting endeavor of all. Again, thank you so much for joining us today here in Vienna.
Thank you very much, Regina. Thank you.